come on Twitch. It's a good time. So as we jump back in to, we're gonna probably pick up the clip here just a little bit as we try to round out here the rest of the Eastern Conference. The number 6 seed. I saw a great meme where somebody asked, what did it cost for the New York Knicks to be good? And the response was, it cost the Yankees. Yankees are currently horrible, and the New York Knicks are the number 6 seed. A lot of Julius Randle topping the stat sheet. Luke, what's kind of what's the big question in your mind as it relates to the Knicks?
I think the biggest question is still, who are they going to sign this offseason? um, I, I I give them a lot of props for being competitive and like turning a woebegone organization around, looking like a functional basketball team. And you know, I think a lot of teams, like you've seen, just adding like names does not help. Like, you look at the Timberwolves. Like, I think you could argue they have more talent than the Knicks and just lose constantly. Um, but they got a good coach. They got a coach. He's put together teams that have made deep playoff runs. They got guys that play hard, and they play good defense. I don't think they're going very far with the current makeup. But I think we get too caught up in the rings culture, where if you don't win a championship, like, it means nothing. But I think it's hard to have a win. I think you got to give them some props just for getting there. But then obviously they're hoping to make some additions this offseason, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Amen. And I think as it stands right now, I think just understanding, how to manage Derrick Rose's time as the season ends out, I think is going to be critical as it relates to their performance in the playoffs. Derrick Rose has done well so far, but he has injury problems, right? So it's managing that, and maybe not going full Kawhi in terms of load management, but minutes restriction, kind of keeping that in mind, I think is definitely part of being the coach and trying to understand that and manage that well.
And almost any outcome is a win for them this season. I think, unless D Rose is legitimately like just a badgered, they should just ride whoever's best and just be like, I don't think they see D Rose or Alfred Payton as like a long-term solution at point guard. And I think they're hoping for more at that position. So just play whoever's best, see what happens, and then hopefully the Garden will be rocking again next year, and just generate some buzz for the team. And because they're gonna get some poor kid who's way overdrafted on there that everyone's gonna be hyped about, and it's gonna be a good situation next season.
Lou, I finish in a going to finish in a play-in title. They won't hold on to succeed, but this team to the first round, but probably in the first round. What about you?
I think it's about right. I think the Heat are probably going to catch them. They're going to find themselves in the play-in, and I think depending on the matchup, they could get through that, but they're not going to go any further.
I hear you. Which, speaking of the Heat, number 7 seeded Heat, 30-28, big face coffee, a lot of G Butler, a lot of Bam Adebayo. They weren't to do much. Made the and in a lot of ways, they ran a lot of the team. They kind of ran it back with a lot of their players, and it's not like they had a good season last year. So and on the one hand, you're kind of like, what happened? But then on the other hand, you're like, well, they went on a great run, and that's just so that from kind of the top 3 and the big 3 of the East teams wise, acceptable to get a playoff upset by the Heat.
I think any one of those middle three of the Celtics, Hawks, or Bucks could. I mean, obviously, with the Bucks have the memory is fresh in their brain. I would expect them to come in truly desperate to not lose to the Heat again. um, but sometimes that backfires, and you're trying too hard, even though they're a better team. But I can see the Celtics or Hawks losing to them like pretty easily. Even though the Heat have been relatively dysfunctional compared to a finals team last year, it was just they had a crazy run. Tyler Hero was out of his mind for a few straight weeks and he's not been that this season. So I would not be surprised with. I'd be more stunned if they did go on a run this year than if they didn't. But literally anything can happen. They've got one of the biggest enigmas in Jimmy Butler and one of the best coaches in Spoelstra, and maybe Hero's just like a playoff monster lurking in there somewhere. So
yeah, playoff Rondo, and now we have playoff Hero.
we have playoff Hero. I don't know if we're going to get him this year or not, but we'll see.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I think the Heat are going to finish in that number 6 spot. I think I don't want to bet against the Heat until the conference finals, because they're, that's a team with, yet again, it's their ceiling is definitely higher, but it's not as probable, right? It's not very likely, but they're more likely to make a deep, maybe conference semis or even conference finals run, assuming they get a Milwaukee Bucks matchup. I'm of the frame of mind that Milwaukee's going to press too hard, and they just need to stay loose against the Heat. And I don't know if I see them doing that. So what's kind of the ceiling that you're seeing for the Heat this year?
I think like that second round kind of neighborhood. I think they are a team that how the matchups break could get further. Like, I wouldn't be stunned if they're end up in the conference finals, but I think last year was more of I'm not going to call it a fluke, because you beat the teams in front of you, but it was more an aberration than it was like the normal. And I think this year is we've seen who they really are. Just, they're a good team. They got some good players, but Dragic is getting kind of old, and Heroes is still a teenager, and we shouldn't expect that much more out of him.
That no doubt. So that's Miami Heat. Now we're gonna go up to the Carolinas, home of Bojangles. Bojangles also be our sponsor. I would love to eat Bojangles in my Mercedes Benz. So Luke, as it relates to our current number 8 seed, the Charlotte Hornets, right? Here's my first question for you. Can Terry
It's bow time, just in case. It was Connor. Nice.
Yes. Hello. We are friend. We're a live show with sometimes internet goes crazy. So don't you love it? Don't you love the liveness?
It's one of those weird times where I don't know whose voice you're actually hearing. I'm like, am I in control, or is Connor the captain still?
No worries, man. No worries. But so we're gonna press on here to the Charlotte Hornets. Luke, can Terry Rozier break the space-time continuum with one of his dunks coming up?
Rozier, probably not. Miles Bridges, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, I think Miles Bridges has turned into he's obviously a ridiculous dunker, but he's actually played really well this season. Rozier is interesting with looking back to the Kemba Walker situation. Like, I think the Celtics would happily have Terry Rozier back instead of Kemba at this point. But yeah, I mean they're another team where it's like they're kind of like a good job, good effort. I think they've a little bit overperformed their roster, and they're playing some good basketball. They just don't have a ton of talent, especially with LaMelo out, and out too, I think.
LaMelo, I saw he just got cleared back for basketball activity, but what does that mean towards the end of the season, and continuity and whatnot? So Um, as it relates to the Hornets, I see them as a play-in tourney kind of team, and I don't see them getting out of the play-in tourney. What about you, Luke? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're squarely in the play in. I think I could see them getting out. Like they've really game there. But I mean, they're not going to get out of the first like actual round.
No doubt, no doubt. So as we round out our, we got two more teams here. Luke, thank you so much for joining this evening. We've got our two Midwestern teams here, Indiana Pacers and Chicago Bulls. So Luke, I know you mentioned, and to harken back to your Knicks take, your number one thing is, um, how, the biggest question for the Knicks is going to be who are they going to get in free agency. Moving forward, kind of the same question for the Pacers. How can Indiana avoid more time in the doldrums of mediocrity?
The Pacers are in a much stickier situation than the Knicks because people want to play for the Knicks theoretically. Hasn't quite been the case recently, but historically it is. The Pacers not so much. So I think they're they're a long course here. Like they're not going to be a sign one guy, one superstar, and turn the whole thing around. I think they play good basketball. They're well coached. They usually don't make like signs or trades or anything. I just think they got to hope that they draft well, that those guys pan out relatively quickly, and they can just keep getting better. I mean, they've managed to acquire that other people didn't think were very good that turned out to be good, and just have like that little bit of edge. You think like Oladipo when he was still healthy, Malcolm Brogdon, like nobody saw him as this level. So keep just that kind of edge of making like really good value signings and drafting well, then they could be back in the mix in a couple years. But it's much harder for sure. They got their work cut out for them.
No doubt, no doubt.
'Cause the other option is to trade everybody and tank it, but I don't think they're a team that's going to embrace that.
Yet again, just like my Orlando Magic, we were sitting around a coffee table when trades kept on happening and all the good players for the Magic kept on getting traded. But
Yes, it was a span of like 30 minutes, and it was like, oh, do you have a Magic jersey? Because you might get a call now.
good for Aaron Gordon, though. Little West Coast, little Western Conference shout out. I think Aaron Gordon has landed in a great situation. I know Jamal Murray tore his ACL, but the Nuggets are still playing solid.
Yeah, they really found a version of that team for a couple weeks until Murray got hurt, which is a huge shame. I hate to see anyone get hurt, but especially when like they've really found their groove and looked like they could be an actual finals. And who knows if they can kind of fill the void a little bit, they still could be, but it's going to be harder.
No doubt, no doubt. So, but back on the Pacers, I think that this could be a team that finishes outside of the playoffs. I could see the Pacers really kind of slipping outside of the playoffs, and with that, their ceiling will be the one inside of their houses during the playoffs. So that's as far as the ceiling will go on the Indiana Pacers. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they have a low ceiling. I think they're doing their best, but they just don't have a whole lot of talent.
No. There you go, which brings us to another potentially low ceiling team with not tons of talent. The current number 10 seed, Chicago Bulls, 24-33, leave it to the Eastern Conference to have their last playoff seeds have losing records. Got to give a shout out to newly acquired Nick Vucevic, leading the team with roughly 10 boards a night. But Luke, want to hear from you yet again, kind of same question in terms of Indiana. I mean, I feel like you got a couple more at least. I like Vooch a lot. I don't think he's necessarily your number one guy because he's too, like, he makes impact but it's kind of quiet impact. I always called Vooch the quietest like 2010 guy in the NBA. You look up at the end of the night and you look at Vooch's stats and you're like, he was not that good tonight, but he still somehow managed to have a lot of impact. Obviously, Zach LaVine, has a bright future ahead of him, but just I think there's some roster questions that Chicago's got to work through. So, I mean, what do you think? What do you think the Bulls, are going to be kind of looking at moving forward?
I think they're in a tough situation because I mean they gave up a pretty good amount of stuff to get Vooch, and have gotten worse. Which is not great. And then on top of that, they have the looming threat of Zach LaVine's free agents of his mind this year. And I think there's going to be way more interested parties than there were, a calendar year ago. So not only did they give up, their draft capital and players like Wendell Carter to get Vooch, you might be stuck with an aging center as like the center of your franchise, and also no draft picks, which is a tough place to hang.
That is not a good. That is not a good spot in this NBA.
And all your recent draft pick that is playing is not any good, and Lauri Markkanen. The guy from this year, I'm blanking on his name. He's been pretty good, but he's not like a huge difference maker yet. Draft pick from this past year, Patrick Williams. He's shown some bright spots, but like he's not going to be a guy that's going to carry your team and just make up for LaVine leaving. Which, so you're going to pay LaVine just an absurd amount of money, which will handicap you in one way, or don't pay him and lose a ton of games.
Yeah, the Bulls are in an interesting position, that's for sure. Definitely got to keep Zach LaVine happy. And does that involve him being excited about the future of the franchise, or dollars, or a little bit of both? We'll see.
They're honest, a decent blowed up candidate. I mean, they have some very tradable contracts as far as like the salary numbers. Like there's a ton of mid-level contracts out there to make trades, but if they max out LaVine and then find someone that's just wanting to take on salary to dump it later, there's Al-Farouq Aminu, there's like Tomas Satoransky, those guys, Garrett Temple. There's all guys that you could maybe move, try to make another space to get somebody else, but it's going to be difficult.
That it will be. But as it relates to this year, I do think the Bulls will have enough to get into the play-in tournament. I think that, they did win the other night. I know they lost a couple in a row, including to the Orlando Magic, which as a Magic fan, I was bummed about because now I'm in the Cade Cunningham sweepstakes. No, I think they can finish out at least, I think they can be a 10 seed, but I don't see them, if they make it into the play-in tournament, I don't see them leaving.
I think if they're still in the play-in tournament, like they're right on the edge, like I said earlier, the Wizards could jump on. I think either that last one in and are going home quickly, or like they don't even make it.
Yep. So that is how we feel about some things in the Eastern Conference. Luke, we already mentioned the Wizards earlier tonight as one team that is most likely to play their way into the playoffs. That's kind of my main team, I think, is the only best chance to play in. Any other teams out there you think have a chance to play in?
The only other one would be the Raptors. I mean, I think they're the only ones that have like the mathematical like odds for it to even be possible. But they've just been pretty ugly recently too. I mean, I don't know. Either of those teams are. I think the Raptors would have like a better chance, with the championship, and some other talented guys in the roster. But so, Wiz, if anybody.
Yeah. So no, that I did lose you just for a little bit there, but I think we're talking about the Wizards and the Raptors, and outside of that, that's kind of it. But so